Hey, it's Sri here. In today's video, I'm going to talk you through how to cope with a separation, in particular, 3 really important steps that you really want to be taking right now. Now, before we dive in, I know that going through a separation is some of the most extreme pain that you're probably going to go through in your life. It's so crushing on every level, but I really want you to know that, there is hope. Transformation is real, and, I speak to women every single day who've experienced massive shifts. Some of my clients like Angie and Laurie and Monique and Sarah and all these beautiful women have been able to create these incredible shifts. So make sure you stick around to the very end of this video so that you take in all of the information that I'm talking you through and really be able to maximize your chances of saving your marriage and really creating that healing from the inside. And make sure you hit that subscribe button below and click on that bell notification as well, so every week you get access to my latest videos where I talk you through more about how to recover from infidelity, how to really understand male psychology at a deep level, and also what you can do to maximize your chances of saving your marriage. Now, I get it. When he said that he wants a separation or a divorce, it just cuts you to the absolute core. And my heart goes out to you right now, and I mean that because I speak to women every single day who are going through these sorts of challenges, so I know what you're going through. But one thing I really believe in is trying to be as resourceful as we possibly can. When you're in a really difficult situation, our emotions take over. And when our emotions take over, it becomes really difficult to navigate your way through a situation like this. How do you move forward? How do you go about making practical shifts so that you can maximize your chances of saving your marriage? How do you go about actually getting him to, shift within himself so that he actually wants to work on this marriage? And not only that, but you're most likely going to be feeling a whole range of emotions around guilt and fear and just insecurities and feelings of inadequacy. There's a lot of stuff that's going to be thrown into this emotional cocktail, if you like. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to talk you through 3 really important areas that you need to be working on in your marriage and also within yourself in order to be able to move forward and really maximize your chances of saving your marriage, but also growing and healing from within as well. Now, the first step that we want to take is around the physical. Now, what I mean by the physical is the practical circumstances that we're actually dealing with in terms of your husband and how to communicate with him and the steps that you need to be taking in order to manage the circumstances that you're in right now. So we have to learn how to actually communicate with our partner in that particular instance. You see, he's not going to want to go into these deep, heavy conversations. Why? Because the chances are he's already made up his mind. He's already thought about this for a lengthy period of time, and now he's at a place where he's like, you know what, I'm done. Now, it's probably come as a bit of a surprise or a shock to you, and so when it's a shock, what do? We want to push harder. We want to have those deeper conversations. We want to understand why. We want to understand what can we do here to try and create a shift, or just give me one more chance, whatever it is. So from a communication perspective, you've got to be careful to not push too much, because he's not going to want to do that. He's not going to want to have those conversations at a deeper level. You've got to keep it as practical and as pragmatic as you possibly can. Now, how we do that is through the mental and the emotional side of healing, which I'm going to talk about in a few minutes. Now, the key to communication is that we've got to create those mental and emotional shifts on the inside first, before we even say a word. If we're always emotional and we're feeling anxious and stressed, it's never going to come across in the best way. You're never going to have the most productive conversations because you're going to be reacting in an emotional way. He's then going to react that way. You're going to potentially interpret those things in a different way to what he's maybe saying, and then it becomes this tennis match, and you don't want to go down that path. So the first thing is communication is important. How we do that and how we shift that is through the emotional and mental healing, which I'm going to talk about, as I said, in a few minutes. Now, the second part of the physical realm is the legal component. Now, I'm a real big believer that in any situation, in order to be able to move forward, in order to, maintain a really stable mindset, is to sometimes make peace with the worst case scenario. And so, whilst you don't want to focus on the worst case scenario all the time, if you can just get to a place where okay, legally, this is what I'm entitled to, worst case scenario, if it gets messy or whatever, then it means that you don't need to put your energy into that anymore, because you've understood and you've accepted the worst case scenario. And even in my life, I had to go through a bit of a tricky situation years ago with my ex-partner. And so I needed to understand, worst case scenario, if we separated, what would be the implications? Because I had invested a lot of money into a house that we owned at the time. I was really worried that, if we were to part ways, what would happen there? Would she be entitled to 50% even though I've contributed probably about 90%? That made me quite uncomfortable. But by understanding and just having a legal consultation, just so I could understand what was the worst case scenario, it helped me to find peace, knowing, okay, if this is the worst case scenario, this is what's going to happen. I'm okay with this mentally and emotionally. And then what it means now is I can put my energy into actually making sure that it is, the best possible outcome. And as it turned out, everything was done beautifully and amicably. And that's what you want. You want an amicable situation no matter what, because otherwise both parties get bitter and there's a lot of negativity and tension, and you don't want any of that. So whilst I'm not a fan of focusing on the worst case scenario, if you can at least just get some of that legal advice to start with, just a basic consultation, it doesn't need to be, a full-blown retainer or anything like that, but just understanding that worst case scenario, then you can then put your energy into having those practical conversations and doing your best to try and reconcile and really maximize your chances of saving your marriage. Now, the second part of this process of coping with a separation is to understand the mental. And the mental consists of two components in terms of how I'm going to describe it. The first is understanding the male psychology within the situation. You've got to get clear on how men operate, in particular, how your husband is operating in this moment in time. You see, a lot of men in these situations don't feel like there is any possibility of change. They don't think that it's ever going to change. They don't think that you're ever going to change. So they've just assumed, look, I'm done. This has been going on for way too long. I'm sick of it. I just want to be free. I just want to be on my own. And so there are two components to what I'm just talking about. One, they've made up their mind. Two, they've also decided that they want freedom. They want to get away from that environment. Because so much of a man's existence is about experiencing freedom. This is why so many men want to earn a lot of money, because when they earn money, it means freedom for them, not being constrained on any level. So this is a big part of this journey. And why you need to understand this, it's because if you're going to push and try and control him and try and do whatever you can to ensure that he comes back, immediately that challenges his idea of freedom. So rather than going down that path of trying to push him into doing those things or trying to get what you're needing at this moment in time, which by the way is completely understandable, what you want to be doing is actually stepping into his world, understand what's actually going on in his mind. Really begin to have some productive conversations. Really just having open-hearted conversations about where each other is at this moment in time. Doesn't mean you have to do a complete post-mortem on the marriage or anything like that, but just understand their world. And just a simple question like, honey, look, I know this is obviously a difficult time for you right now, but how are you doing? Let's just forget about this marriage completely. How are you doing? I'm not asking you to talk about the marriage. I just want to know that you're okay. And just a moment of love, a moment of compassion, a moment of care can really help a man to just open up a little bit. It may take a couple of instances, it may take a few instances for him to get to that point. He may be one of those individuals that has been shut down for years and years, and he may not actually even communicate that stuff at all. But I do believe over time, if you can make those shifts and really take in a really open-hearted approach, where you're not actually focusing on your own self, but you're focusing on him in those moments, then it can slowly help them to open up a little bit. And I think that's really important in terms of having productive conversations. So, male psychology and understanding it is a very important part. And in addition to that, there is your own mental approach to the situation. And in particular, you really want to be vigilant and aware of the thoughts that you're regularly thinking in the situation. Your brain is going to want to go to the worst case scenario. What happens if this marriage ends? What's going to happen with the kids? How am I going to survive? All of that stuff. And that's very normal. but we've got to be really careful and we've got to direct our mind accordingly. See, if you're always thinking that stuff, then it's going to put you in a really negative emotional state. And when you're in that state, things are going to spiral out and it's going to be very hard to be able to move forward. And very rarely are you going to be able to actually maximize your chances of saving your marriage in that situation. However, if you can get to a place of what we call acceptance, where you're not resisting what's happening right now, you're simply at a place of acceptance of what is, then you can move forward and actually be quite practical and pragmatic about the situation. You know, yes, it's normal to feel these emotions. I'm totally okay with that. There's nothing wrong with feeling those emotions. But if we're always living in that place over and over, it's only going to make things worse for you. And it's going to make it very hard to move forward. And a lot of the time, the pain actually comes from a resistance to the circumstances. Not the circumstances themselves, but the resistance to it. What I mean by that is your husband has asked for a separation. You yourself don't want that. So therefore, you're naturally resisting that situation. And because you're resisting it, it means that you're moving away from actually accepting the situation. Now, I'm not saying that you accept and go, wow, this is wonderful. Acceptance is not about saying that this is what I like. It means that you just make peace with what is. You accept it as it is. And you acknowledge that it is what it is. But it doesn't mean you have to live in that place or think of the worst case scenario over and over and over. It just means that you say, I accept that this is what it is right now. He has made that decision. However, what I can do now is make sure that I'm being practical about moving forward. And I do that by applying the steps that I've just talked about so far. Finally, what I believe is the most important step that you can take is the emotional. The emotional shifts that you need to make are literally the most important thing you can do. And the reason is that when we're in a down, sad, emotional state, what sort of decisions do we make at that point? Do we make our best decisions, or are they not so good? And I know in my life, whenever I've been really emotional about something, where I've let my fears, my insecurities, my wounds really open up, I tend to make some pretty poor decisions. However, if I'm in a really, really beautiful emotional state, and I feel positive, and I feel happy, and I feel joyful, and I feel acceptance, suddenly I'm able to make the best decisions for my future. And if you think about it as well, when you're having conversations with people, do we have good conversations when we're in a really joyful state? Of course we do. But if we're in a really negative state and we bring a negative energy to it, what happens? We get triggered by the other person. They say something, we get triggered. We react back, they get triggered. They react back, and then boom, boom. And you, as I said, you have this tennis match. And I don't want that for you. You know, I want you to be able to really, really heal on the inside. And the reason why the emotional healing is so important is because of two reasons. One, when we heal, then what happens is it tends to shift those around us as well. You know, I've seen this so many times, not only in my life, but in my clients' lives, that when they shift, they tend to attract all these beautiful experiences into their lives. You know, their husbands come back, you know, they get a better job, they make more money, all of that stuff. But when they're in a really low emotional state, then it's almost like, you know, the universe or God or whatever just cuts off that flow and you're not able to get things moving in the right direction. So it really comes down to our own emotional healing. And the thing with emotional healing as well is that in a relationship, the idea of a relationship is to magnify some of our deep wounds and fears so that we can actually heal them, so we can become whole and become the best versions of ourselves. And that's why I find that when people shift themselves, then other people start to shift as well. So that's the first part of the emotional healing equation, if you like. The second part is for your own healing. You know, you don't want to have to go through and suffer your way through this really difficult time. You know, it's painful enough to deal with the possibility of separation and kids being involved and so on. But we don't also want to add to that by letting those emotions take over and almost have a life of their own. We want to create that healing inside so we can show up in the best possible way. Now, I get it. your mind at this moment in time is probably going to resist a lot of the stuff that I'm saying, or resist even wanting to do that work, because it's like, hang on, I'm entitled to feel this way. And just to be clear, you're absolutely entitled to feel that way, 100%. But what you really want to ask yourself is, do you want to suffer your way through it? And I think if you're honest with yourself, you'll be saying no. You're wanting to heal through it. If you weren't wanting to heal through it, you wouldn't be watching this video. So I honor you for that. But healing on the inside emotionally is very, very important. And to start with, just becoming aware of what your emotions are is a really important part, because most of us are so disconnected from our emotions. We're always living in our mind and thinking and thinking and thinking and focusing on the physical world, rather than understanding what's actually going on the inside. And once you become aware of those emotions, that's when you can start to heal and shift. So what do you do when you actually are going through and you become aware of these emotions, but you're not sure how to actually heal? Well, this is exactly where my program, the Authentic Relationship System, really kicks in, because it's all about going deep into your own healing and creating that level of transformation on the inside, and helping you to manage your way through the physical, mental, and emotional realms, so that you can maximize your chances of saving your marriage and really shift on the inside, so you can find joy and peace and love and laughter and happiness. And I've got so many of these beautiful women in my program who have created incredible shifts and are finding real joy on their journey now, because they've really understood how to create the shifts, and they almost become their own practical psychologist, which is my wish for you. I see a lot of people going through counseling and therapy, and they spend years going through therapy, but they find themselves battling and still not really feeling like they're able to move forward. And this is where my program is so valuable, because I give you the practical strategies and the tools that you can begin to apply right now, so that you're able to move forward and create that healing on the inside. It's not an overnight thing. Just to be clear, this is about real profound dramatic shifts. And it's about being patient, and it can take time. But I promise you, all the things you're going to learn are going to transform the quality of your life. So if it's something that feels right for you, if you connect with my work, if you resonate with some of the things that I'm talking about, then all you need to do is in the description section below, just click on that link where it says book a call with me. Just click on that link, choose a time that works for you, and then I'll contact you at the scheduled time, just so I can learn a little bit more about you and where you're at now, where you want to get to, and how we can bridge that gap in the shortest possible time. I can't wait to be of service to you. So once again, just click on that link, and then I'll contact you at that time. Can't wait to speak to you. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you've liked it, make sure you hit that like button below. If you want to get more videos like this, hit that subscribe button. And do let me know what your biggest takeaway is from this video as well. I always love hearing the comments and the questions. So make sure you comment below, and I'll respond to every single one of you. If you want to learn how my incredible client Monique saved her marriage, click this video above. And if you want to learn how to heal from infidelity, click this video above. Thank you so much for watching this video. Have an incredible Thanksgiving, and I'll talk to you in the very next video.